Now we are going to be looking at how we can perform some magic with the functions that we have learned using view datasets. Yes, even myself, I am tired of using NumPy to create the data points. Let's look at some real data. So the data set that we're going to be using is the sales data CSV file, and I'm showing an highlight of what this looks like. It's a sales data that have different columns. I think about 27 columns with different, values. For example, the order number, when the order was made, the quantity that was ordered, the price for each item, the order line number, the amount of sales, the date, the status, that is if it was shipped, it has been cancelled, if there was a dispute, for instance, the quantity ID, month ID, year ID, and some other many columns. So we are going to exploring this data and doing some magic with Matplotlib with it. It will also be followed by some exercises that will help you to reinforce all that you've learned. So here I'm using the pandas module to read the CSV as a data frame. If you want to know more about pandas, what a data frame means, you should check out my course on pandas. But basically, this just helps us to transform this into a tabular form that we can then start working with using MATLAB function. And that is what I've basically done here. Now we'll start with a line plot. We know that with a line plot, we start with the plt.plot function. We pass in our x. In this case, I am selecting. So what I've done is that I'm selecting the same way you have the x, the list of values. I am selecting the list of values using the order date as my x and the sales as my y. So the order date is what we have here in this column. And then the sales is the amount that was paid for that particular order. And I'm just selecting the first 30 rows using pandas. And here is our marker R. So I have my X label, my Y label, and then the title of that particular plot. As you see here, it just shows me that, on this particular date, this is the amount on this particular date. So here we can basically, if we want to know the date that we made the most sales, we can just look at this point because it's the peak and look at the date. But this is really messed up. And this is where X-Ticks, remember X-Ticks helps us to rotate the value of our X-axis. If it's Y-Ticks, it will rotate the value of the Y-axis. So using that trick, we now have a better readable format. So now I can look at this high peak here and trace it back to what date. And I can see, okay, on the 15th of November 2004, at this time, this was when we made our most sales. So this is one way we use, line plot with real data sets. And I've created some practice questions for you here. And I also give example of what your final output should look like. Now we're going to look at exploring scatter plots with the same data sets. It's the same thing we've been doing before. This time around, I'm setting a figure size for my scatter plot. I'm using the scatter function, passing the same X, the Y, how I want my plots to look like, the color, the marker. This time around, I've chosen the star. And then, every other thing here is things that we have seen. The grid is what I also want to reinforce your, just remind you that there is a grid function that allows us to show this as a grid. And that is what we have here. As you can see, the scatter point here is like not looking like the little data points that we have seen before. And the scatter point just shows us, this same graph that we have seen with the line plot is what I've done with the scatter plot. And you will see that it's very different when we look at it from a scatter plot. But this just shows us that, the quantity that was ordered, in this case, is a lot between 20 and 50. So most of the customers usually order between 20 and 50, just very few of them. So these are what we can call outliers, for instance, because they are not with this other normal looking or most populous kind of scenarios that we see. So these are where we actually draw insights for, different kind of charts. And I've also added a practice question for you there. And what the final output of your practice questions should look like. Yeah. Now let's look at the bar plot and histogram. As we know, we use the bar plot with categorical variables. And in this case, I have used it with the product line of the data set. So the product line is where, what kind of line does the product that they bought, does it belong to, train, vintage cars? Is it a truck? Is it motorcycle? So I guess this sales data is from automobile company. And it shows us here I have just added the X, which is the product line, and the quantity ordered. So I'm basically plotting for each product line how many quantity were ordered for each of them, because this is a category, right? And maybe something to just highlight is that I have also rotated. I think I just like to rotate the X sticks. Which is what we have here, because if I decide not to rotate it, you can imagine that this will start overlapping this. So yeah, that is what I've done here with the bar charts. And if I want to make it a bar horizontal, it's just going to be the same thing. Oh, got multiple values for width. Yeah, I think I have to remove that for bar horizontal. And let's see that. Yeah, the data set is a lot, so I'm expecting this will take some time. So here we go.
Hello there. If you have enjoyed this course so far, kindly support me and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Subscribe will also help you know when newer courses are released. Thank you for subscribing. I do hope you have. Let's carry on with the course.
And I've also done the same thing using histogram. But just like, histogram is used with numerical data, and quantity ordered is numerical data. So I've also set some values like the color, the number of bins that I want, that is these thin lines, and also the edge color, which is black. So these are just new styling that I'm showing you. If you check the documentation, there are so many of them that cannot be covered. You find different interesting parameters that you can even use to add more beauty to your plots. And yeah, this is what the histogram looks like. So it shows us the distribution of the quantities. And as we see from that scatter plot earlier, I was saying that many people are ordering between 20 to 50 values, 50 quantities. So when we check here, we can see that, the distribution here being replicated. So as you see, it's now a question of, when I'm showing this distribution, do I want to use a scatter plot or do I want to use an histogram, which is more appealing, which is more, who are my audience? Do they understand what scatter plot looks like, or will I have to explain it to them? I think people are more familiar with bar charts and histogram. So if the audience are very new and you think it may be hard for them to really grasp the scatter plots, then you just want to go for your histogram. So this is where the choice of which one should I go for, especially when you have many that fulfill, the same purpose. And I've extended that to also the status, and we can also use, this is me just showing you that I can be a rebel and I can use histogram with categorical variables, but that's not actually right. But yeah, we can also do that with histogram. Actually, nobody is going to question you for that. And it's because I just wanted to see the distribution of the different values of shipped and disputed. Under the status, I want to know how many of the items have been shipped, how many of them have been disputed, in process, cancelled, on hold, or resolved. I can actually do this with a bar chart, but because with a bar chart, I need to pass in these values. Like I need to say, okay, for shipped, it is 2,500. For, I need to create that order list that contains the values of each category, which I don't have. And that's why, I could use an histogram for it. Normally, I could have used pandas to actually create that Y that I can group by the different categories. But because this course is not focused on pandas and I didn't want to start deviating from the major focus of this course, which is Matplotlib, I decided to just use the histogram to plot that. So I hope that was explainable or you understand. And I've also listed some practice question on that, each of these categories. So for this one, the bar chart and histogram, these are questions that you can practice with. Although I have added the challenge that you should use pandas to group, I do hope, if you want to take a course on pandas, you take the course that I have done, which gives a really robust introduction to how you can use pandas and how you can combine it with Matplotlib. So this is another question for the histogram. And now we're going to look at pie charts. I've just plotted a very simple pie chart here where this same histogram distribution that I've shown, that shows the under the status column, it shows us that, these are the many items that were shipped. These are the number of items that were disputed, number of items that were cancelled. I want to display that with a pie chart. So I've just done that using the df status, the value counts, because I want to count the number of values. So this is basically a pandas function, but what this returns is that it basically counts the frequency for me. So for each of the value in that status category, like each of the category in that status column, it counts how many of those categories are found, and I'm using that to plot the pie charts. And as you would see intuitively from here, we can say, a large portion of our orders are actually shipped. So let's say you are showing this to some manager who wants to really understand how the logistics of the orders have been. This is a very good way to show it. From here, they can easily know that we actually have most of our orders shipped and we just have very few portion of them that are unresolved, that are cancelled, that are in process or disputed. And this is just some pandas functions. And what I'm doing with the pandas function is that I'm grouping the sales by the country that they have come from, and I'm returning that. And that's because I'm using it to actually draw a pie chart of the sales per country. So remember that I mentioned that for a pie chart, we only use it when we have very few numbers of categories. As we know, we have a lot of countries in the world. So when you are doing something where you are showing a lot of categories, like many countries, for instance, a pie chart is a wrong way to go about it. So this was something I wanted to really highlight. The best thing that you want to do is to go for a bar chart. A bar chart is better for lot of values when it comes to categorical variables. But when it comes to pie charts, if you have more than 5 or 7 categories, so we have more than 7 countries for sure, so pie charts is not a good choice for this. So I just wanted to show this. That's why I had to go through this pandas way to group the data and to find the frequency so that I can show you what that looks like. But basically the focus is not the pandas function that I've written. The focus here is to see that because there are many categories in this particular column, which is the country, we cannot force it into a pie chart, because as you see, it is not really easy to read. It's too big. The legend is like, things are just over the place. But when we do this with a bar chart, it is easy to interpret. And there's also some practice questions that I've put there for pie charts. I hope you've enjoyed this course. I hope that it has helped you to really understand Matplotlib. Next, we are going to look into Seaborn and how we can replicate some of the charts that we have seen here in Seaborn. And I'll also talk about the advantage that Seaborn has in some certain cases that shows us the limitations of Matplotlib.
Hello there. If you have enjoyed this course so far, kindly support me and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Subscribe will also help you know when newer courses are released. Thank you for subscribing. I do hope you have. Let's carry on with the course.